So today I want to play a game with you. Yesterday I talked about why they do it, why YouTubers make these extreme claims, and I drew on something that Vlad Vexler was talking about in that video to kind of explain how audience capture works and how YouTubers start out one way and then they go kind of extreme to one direction or another. So today we're going to look at just about 5 or 6 different articles, and as we go through them, I'm going to show you what I mean. So let's start with this first one. Now this first one's in RT. Now I read a lot of RT just to get the sense of what's going on the other side. And when I do that, I get a good, healthy rounding out, not because I'm thinking, well, RT must be true, but because I'm hearing what they're trying to say or why they're trying to say certain things. So here, a Russian MP, and Prigozhin still is just dominating the news. And he's like the gift that keeps on giving here. Russian MP gives reason for Wagner mutiny. And so the Russian member of parliament, speaking to the State Duma Defense Committee, explained that several days prior to Wagner's mutiny, the Russian Defense Ministry had declared that all military groups should sign contracts, and describing the policy as absolutely correct. And I'm hearing this as the likely cause again and again in multiple media sources. And so far, so good, right? I mean, even a blind squirrel can find a nut occasionally, or a broken clock is right twice a day. So I don't automatically discount what they're saying, the facts. It's the slant that I'm worried about, not necessarily the facts, but the facts are often off too in RT. Everybody apart from Wagner complied, apart from this gentleman Prigozhin, who refused, the member of parliament said. This means that there will be no more money, no more financial or material resources, and for Mr. Prigozhin, money is a factor, an important one, maybe even decisive. Wow, okay, and so that could be the case. The threat of defunding, quote, excessive and stupid ambitions. Now, when you're starting to hear people talk like that, you know that they're being a little less than neutral in the way that they're approaching things. An emotionally agitated state resulted in, quote, high treason and the deceit of Prigozhin's brothers in arms, the MP said. So he's clearly biased one particular direction, but it's neutral to see that he's biased and recognize that without going one way or the other with him. Okay. And then finally, however, Prigozhin refused to follow suit, claiming that his group is a highly efficient entity which is organically integrated into the overall system. That's Prigozhin's perspective, and it's fine to see those multiple perspectives. Putin praised the military and security services for effectively stopping a civil war. He described the revolt as being motivated by, quote, personal interest, unquote, and a, quote, betrayal of our friendship of the brothers of arms who are fighting on the front lines. And again, that's a, quote, faithfully executing Putin's perspective. Okay, so what you saw was multiple perspectives, and this was actually a pretty decent article, especially for RT, because there wasn't a lot of lying. There was a lot of different perspectives, and I don't necessarily agree with the perspectives, but it at least was faithfully trying to show what the perspectives were. Now, how would you approach this article of why Prigozhin did this if you're a Ukrainian, right, as opposed to if you are a Russian? So we're going to play a game where we're going to put on our hat, our Ukrainian hat, to see the Ukrainian perspective, and then we'll put on a Russian hat to see the Russian perspective, okay? But we're not going to do that with this article. Let's go on to another one. This one's a little bit more, well, let you just see what I'm saying. So RT is, again, here we have Ukraine will need 117 years to take territories from Russia, according to Seymour Hersh. 117 years? Okay, I think I know what's going on already, because when I read the headline, I was thinking, okay, this is like the snail theory just reversed, and okay, but that's what you'll see here. Kyiv's inability to penetrate Russian defensive lines should serve as a wake-up call in Washington, veteran journalist Seymour Hersh warned. Well, who's Seymour Hersh? He made his name with the My Lai massacre and other things where he exposed U.S. government issues of maybe some official was lying somewhere, or there was a cover-up or something along these lines, and that's good. That serves a legitimate purpose. But if everything is a cover-up, if all you can ever see is a cover-up or some kind of deceptive behavior somewhere, then maybe something's not quite right, because that's all you're seeing. Hersh claimed that Ukrainian forces have only managed to capture 2 square miles of Russian-held land over the last 10 days of fighting. In the 2 weeks beforehand, he continued, the Ukrainian military only took 44 square miles of territory, much of it open land, before the first of Russia's multiple defensive lines. with Russia holding 40,000 square miles of land that had previously been part of Ukraine, and an informed official, that's his secret source, which I'm sure is a Russian officer of some stature, told Hirsch that it would take Ukrainian President Zelensky militarily 117 years to reimpose Kyiv's rule over the territories. That would make sense. Now, okay, before I say something neutral, here's how you could be hyperbolic and say, if you're Richard Medhurst or you're Scott Ritter or something like that, they're never going to get through. If you're Doug McGregor, they're falling next week. It's going to happen. This is the, right? And if you're on the Ukrainian side, you tend to discount that, and you'd say this is assuming that the lines are all the way through the entire area. And so you're starting to see the differences. Now, there's no way that you're going to continue at this particular rate, because you'd have to have defensive lines all the way through. And so there's differences of opinion, but it gets worse, because when you look at the differences of opinion, some get magnified and some become, so watch for emotion. Emotion is a good indicator of whether they are straying away from the facts. Now, it's okay to be emotional. You watch Anna from Ukraine, and she's wearing her emotions, and I watch her because I want to feel what Ukrainians feel. I watch Georgie, and you can see his emotions all over his face as well. There's nothing wrong with emotions per se. The problem is when the emotion dictates the message rather than just being part of what the analysis is, and that's where you can get wrong. You'll see this on the other side of the equation as well, when you see somebody that's gleefully showing how the Russians are doing this, or gleefully about how, see, they're lying about the Kakhovka Dam, the Russians didn't do it, here's our proof about how it's not, and then they're leaving pieces out like Medhurst was doing. Okay, again, Seymour Hersh, if you want to know some background about him, I did this video about Seymour Hersh where he said Zelensky stole $400 million, and you had an unnamed source, and there was nothing, like, he couldn't even get anything printed in mainstream news. He had to do it on his blog because, again, he's printing some unnamed source that nobody's willing to put their reputation on what he's saying. So, okay, at any rate, let's keep going. So here we have Wagner mutiny shows cracks in Russia, says Scholz, that's German Chancellor Scholz, as Putin makes a rare outing. Okay, you can already see where this is going if you're paying attention. So, speaking in a wide-ranging, hour-long interview with the broadcaster ARD, Scholz said, "I do believe he is weakened, as this shows that the autocratic power structures have cracks in them, and he's not as firmly in the saddle as he always asserts." Okay. Russia's going to fall. It's going to happen. I mean, it's almost inevitable that this is right. That's where the Ukrainian side's going to go. Now, the West is united in saying that Russia is going to fall. They're not going to fall. It is, right? They're going to say the Western narrative is this and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, they're going to keep making that claim that the West is just full of propaganda and lies and all that kind of thing. So that's how it's going to go. But then the article is really interesting for a few reasons. This is Putin out here in the crowd. And so that's going to lead us to the next thing. Putin arrived in the remote southern town of Dagestan, Caspian Sea, 1,200 miles from Moscow, and took a public tour, stopping to kiss fans, pose for selfies, shake hands with cheering crowds. It's an unusual move for the secretive president, who one senior security official described as pathologically afraid for his life. And I believe that that is actually true. The Russian president has given a series of public addresses this week in an attempt to repair his public standing and portray Wagner's march on Moscow as a moment that unified Russia, which is exactly what I would expect an autocratic dictator to do. Let's say that Putin supported Prigozhin here and he was Putin's mouthpiece, but then he can arbitrarily shift and support his generals there and then just blame the other guy, and that's how he keeps the balance of power to keep himself where he is. That everything lines up with that's how autocratic dictators behave. But here is the interesting thing. He's in this remote city, he's shaking hands and kissing fans, and we know that he generally doesn't tend to do that. So you're going to have the Ukrainians talking about how this is a body double. Which one of the body doubles is this? This can't possibly be Putin. It has to be somebody else. Now, it could be. We just don't know that if it is or isn't. I wouldn't put it past necessarily, but if you're going to be saying certainly this is what this is, that absolutely, and we can see this is body double number 3. Look at an earlobe. What I mean, just be careful. Okay, be careful of that. Now on the other side, when the Ukrainians do that, that gives the Russian side to say, see these stupid pro-Ukraine supporters talking about body doubles. Putin doesn't need that. He's one of the biggest presidents of the world. He can be out there. He's doing, now he is doing kind of the right thing for him, right? I mean, being out there, making speeches, trying to draw people back together. Whether it's a body double or not, I don't know. Let's say it is. Even if it is, he's still working the plan, trying to get that out there. But you can see how the extreme differences operate. Let's look at another issue here and talk about well, okay, so this is CBS News. Ukraine security chief claims Wagner boss owned by Russian military officers determined to topple Putin. Okay, so this is part of the unfolding theory and saga of what's going on. CBS News learned Wednesday that the U.S. had intelligence suggesting a senior Russian general had advanced knowledge of the mutiny. Okay, and now that seems to fit because this didn't seem to be a spur-of-the-moment thing, as Prigozhin claimed, and that didn't seem to add up. That was part of the Rubik's Cube I was talking about the other day, the pieces that just didn't fit. Would the U.S. have intelligence of it? They could probably get wind of something like that, and so I wouldn't rule that out. Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Olav Danilov, has told CBS News that he believes Prigozhin was in league with not just one Russian military officer, but 14. It's oddly specific, but okay, let's say. And Danilov would be the kind of guy, if anybody had intelligence of it, I would say like it would be like the US, UK, and Ukraine. Not necessarily even in that order, but those are the people that are going to be most trying to find that out. Okay, so let's say that that's what was going on. Prigozhin is not an independent person, Danilov told CBS News. He's owned by high-ranking people in President Putin's inner circle, and they are his owners. One senior general reported to be involved in, at least had known about Prigozhin's attempted uprising, is Sergei Surovikin. Well, everybody knows that those two were chummy. I mean, we all know that. Who commanded Russia's war for several months until he was demoted in January. That's CBS News, and let's look at The Guardian and see what The Guardian has to say about the same topic. Russian general who may have known about Wagner goes missing. The plot thickens. So U.S. intelligence claims that General Sergei Surovikin, who has close ties to Prigozhin, had prior knowledge of the uprising. And so a Russian general who previously led the invasion force in Ukraine has not been seen in public since Saturday, with U.S. intelligence reportedly claiming that they had prior knowledge, and the article goes on and on. So if you are on the Russian side, you're going to say what? You're going to say, well, this is clearly a Western plot to whatever, or Surovikin was not involved. He came out and he condemned it, and this is just the Western press trying to hype it up, and it could go a number of different ways. But they're going to make claims that aren't tied to facts that'll be speculation. Likewise, you can say things on the other side. Like, so I'm putting this hat on, and I'm in this camp, but I'm trying to be as objective as possible. But when Prigozhin first started whatever it was that he was starting, didn't you see a lot of jubilation from the Ukrainian side? And it was short-lived. But they were like, yeah, this is going to happen. They're going to topple whatever. Slow down. Just try to understand what's going on. I get it. I was somewhat excited too, but you wouldn't have gotten that through my videos because I was trying to analyze what is actually happening. I would just like all the Ukrainian YouTubers have liked to see Prigozhin and Putin do something that's distracting from the counteroffensive so that it's harder for Russia to do what Russia's doing and easier for Ukraine. I would like to see that. But you can't assume what you want to have happen. That's just not, it's not fair, right? So you just have to slow down with that. Okay, so my primary message here, whether it's this side or this side, you can't really do that and look for emotion and look for assumptions that are made or assertions that are made without tying it to facts, and that'll give you something safe. And I want to leave you with this final message. Think for yourself, or others will think for you without thinking of you. according to Henry David Thoreau, and that's really good advice. Right? You got to think for yourself. I'm asking you to triangulate on your message. I always find it funny when people say, "Oh, so you just want to share your propaganda, and you don't want us to listen to, Duran or Medhurst or Ritter or whoever it is." And I'm thinking, like, you have not even watched one of my videos if you're making that kind of claim. I'm constantly telling you to triangulate, to think for yourself, to not. I've, in fact, in somewhere where somebody made that comment, I said, "Don't even believe me." Right? Go and search for yourself. I mean, if I sound squirrely, that's fine. You don't have to listen to me, but have a good reason why you believe what you believe and what you're hearing. This is just trolls trying to not trying to cause havoc. By the way, somebody else asked me, did I see a downtick in trolls recently? And I have. It's bizarre. I don't know what to make of it. And if you do, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are in the comments. If this was valuable, thank you for the likes. Please hit like, spread the message. Thank you for the coffee. I appreciate it. This takes a lot of work. Thank you for subscribing and hitting that bell so you don't miss any of these. Thank you more than anything else, though, for being the kind of person that will be willing to listen to this because you care about Ukraine and care about being informed and you want to be able to see clearly. Now, I'm squarely in this team, and this was only for illustrative purposes to show the difference in the hat. But even though I'm on this team and you're on this team, more than likely, if you're listening to me, you want to make sure that you're seeing things clearly. So thank you for taking the time to be with me to hear this message so that you can see things clearly.